I truly believe that one virtuous young woman or young man led by the Spirit can change the world. But in order to do so, we must return to virtue.
Sister Elaine Dalton joins us to define what virtue means and why it's so important today.
We all lead very soft lives in this day and age.
A trek from Fruit Heights to the Salt Lake Temple teaches both youth and adults about the sacrifice of our early pioneers. And a group of Latvian saints travel over 300 miles to attend the Stockholm, Sweden Temple, many for the very first time. Hear their stories today on Mormon Times. Good morning and welcome to Mormon Times. Virtue, it's a word we don't hear often in today's society. The world would have us believe that high moral standards are old-fashioned and unnecessary. But now more than ever, it's important we teach our youth what it means to be virtuous and why it matters.
We are daughters of our Heavenly Father, who loves us, and we love Him.
Virtue is being pure and clean, spiritually, physically.
To me, virtue means like keeping yourself morally clean, and that includes like being sexually pure, and I think that also includes having like clean mind and thoughts. When you go to heaven and having the Lord say you were a virtuous young woman and that you were an example of the believers would just be such an amazing experience.
Sister Elaine Dalton, General Young Women's President, has spoken on this topic many times. She wants to encourage all women to return to virtue, and she joins us now. Good morning, Sister Dalton. You are so passionate about this particular topic. Why so?
Well, I'm passionate about it because I really believe that the happiness of every young woman depends on that. And we're living in a society right now that is very saturated with just the opposite. In fact, in society today, it seems that if you are not virtuous, that's the way you should be. And when I talk about virtue, what I'm talking about is moral purity and chastity. And so I believe that it's time for our society to return to virtue, because I believe that virtuous society is the strength of a country and a nation. But it's also the strength of families, and the lack of virtue is really eroding families and individuals.
And you put the word virtue into the Young Women's theme after 25 years. It was that important, wasn't it?
We teach values in the Young Women program: faith, divine nature, individual worth, knowledge, choice and accountability, good works, integrity, and now we've added the value of virtue because we feel that it is more important now than ever. And some people will say, well, why wasn't it added there? Why wasn't it there all along? I believe that it's because we really need to have a spotlight on virtue.
And it's really eroded in the last 25 years, hasn't it?
It sort of has eroded in the last, I don't know how long, but it has eroded.
Well, we have some women who wanted to ask you a couple of questions, and first question we have now comes from Sue.
Sister Dalton, what exactly do you mean by the word virtue?
Your definition, is it different than the world's definition?
Well, you know, I think that it is, because I think the word virtue, first of all, I don't think we do hear it very often. And we've sort of put a spotlight on the word. But I also think that the word virtue encompasses all the good qualities of people. What we're talking about when we talk about virtue with the young women is morality and chastity. We're talking about developing a pattern of thought and behavior based on high moral standards, and that encompasses chastity and morality.
Who would you say is your best example of a virtuous woman that you've known in your life?
Hands down, no question, no hesitation, my mother.
Good. I was going to wonder if it was your mother.
And I would guess that almost every woman and every young woman would say the same thing, but my mother is a virtuous woman, and I'm so grateful for that firm foundation that she's built.
And doesn't teaching virtue, it starts in the home. It starts when young women, when they're young, correct? I mean, they've got to learn it early on.
I think so. I think that's really an important thing. And I've had women come up to me since we added the value of virtue into the Young Women theme and just say, thank you. Because what it's done, by using the word virtue, it's given mothers a vehicle wherein they can speak to their daughters about chastity and sexual purity where it may have felt a little awkward before. There's some sort of dignity in the word virtue. And it comes from the Latin root word virtus, which means strength or power. And so a virtuous woman is a woman who's strong. And because she's strong and pure, she has power. There's power in purity.
Power, that's a great word to use for that. Let's go to the next question, and Kathy.
How can we make our homes a safe haven for our families?
Well, you know, I think that is a fabulous question. And I think the way we do that is to be guardians of virtue and guardians of our home. And I think every woman, every man should be a guardian of their home. Our homes, it used to be that you could just lock the doors and all was safe and all was well. But now, because of all the wonderful technology that we have, we also, wonderful things come right into our home, but also some things that really aren't wonderful that can erode family life and individuals. So,
well, you have a new book called A Return to Virtue, and it's interesting because you kind of say a marathon is similar to virtue. What's the connection with a marathon?
I think the connection with running a marathon and with living a virtuous life is strict training.
And you know, you've run several.
Training.
You've run several.
Run several marathons, and so I think it's strict training in the sense that when you run a marathon, you get up every morning and you run a certain number of miles, and if it's raining or snowing or whatever, you still have to do that so you can be prepared. Virtue requires strict training, especially in the environment that young women are living in today, and women and men.
Right, and discipline.
Strict training,
right.
A focus on remaining pure so that you can have the power that you need to navigate in today's world.
Well, I can't wait to read your book, A Return to Virtue. It comes out this Wednesday, and Sister Dalton, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next, members from Latvia traveled hundreds of miles to attend the temple. It was a sacrifice they gladly made. We'll hear their story coming up. And forget the concept of allowance in your home, how to use gospel principles to teach your kids about money. Here in Utah, we are surrounded by temples. They dot the landscape all along the Wasatch Front. In a country like Latvia, however, it's a much different story. They can attend the temple in Helsinki, Finland, more than 200 miles away, or they can travel to Stockholm, Sweden, nearly 300 miles from home.
My name is Lydia. I'm from Latvia, Daugavpils. I'm 7 years in church with my family.
Lydia was one of nearly 60 members from Latvia who recently traveled to Sweden to attend the Stockholm Temple. For most, it was a long time in the making.
To us, it's not really easy way to go to temple because we need a long time to prepare for it and spiritually, and we need to save some money for it, and not always we have enough for it, but always when we are ready to go, miracles happen and we have everything what we need.
For many, this temple visit was a rare opportunity. For others, like Alexandra, it was for the very first time.
So I hear that many people must save up their money for a long time to come.
That's right, because our salaries are pretty low.
Once these saints make the nearly 300-mile journey to Stockholm, they stay in the patron housing and do as much temple work as possible. Several young men and women also made the trip, spending hours doing temple work.
You all done baptisms every day?
Yes.
Twice a day.
Twice a day.
After one full week of temple work, it was time to return home. But these Latvian members will never forget their time in the temple.
It's only one work what we do it, God's work.
Lydia says she'll continue God's work. She recently received her mission call to serve in the New York South Mission, and we wish her all the very best. Coming up next, the 135th operating temple of the church is dedicated in El Salvador. Saints there mark the opening with a huge celebration. And tips for teaching kids the value of hard work, using gospel principles to show them how to manage their own money. Taking youth to the temple is not unusual. What is unusual is when they don't use cars to get there. Darren Adams tracked down several young men and women on their unusual temple trek.
The sun had barely started to come up over the hills above Davis County, but this trek had already been underway for hours. Close to 100 young men, young women, and their adult leaders were heading for the Salt Lake Temple, a trek that would cover more than 20 miles before it was all said and done. This walk had actually started at 3 in the morning as they gathered in their neighborhood in Fruit Heights. They had to walk silently through what was basically the middle of the night, through neighborhoods until they could make it to the Legacy Parkway Trail. And then, with the sun rising, blisters forming, legs aching, and feet pounding, they walked on towards the Salt Lake Temple.
Are you ever going to get back and forth? You're going to walk?
I'm married well, my love. You are brilliant.
They were inspired by the movie Only a Stonecutter, the true story of John Roe Moyle, who also walked more than 20 miles to the Salt Lake Temple. He was a stonemason working on the temple for more than 2 decades and made the weekly trek to the temple in spite of losing a leg. John also rose in the middle of the night to begin his walk. These Latter-day Walkers had been encouraged to walk in honor of an ancestor of theirs who also had done hard things.
We all lead very soft lives in this day and age, and so the bishop thought this would be good to get everyone out there to test your mettle for a little spiritual experience and let the people know that they can actually do tough things. Life isn't always going to be easy.
And it certainly wasn't easy for youth or adults alike.
My feet are sore, and I've got a lot of appreciation for those that had to do this. They're very sore. They're very tired. I'm not going to lie to you, they hurt. And they have not felt this kind of workout for a long time.
It's tiring, yeah, but I'll be happy when we get there.
I want to die and collapse right now.
It's hard.
I'm tired, but it's fun talking to friends.
Blisters and cramping and just general soreness, so it's been fun. It's been fun to just push the kids and see them keep moving.
And keep moving they did. In spite of the physical challenges, they all continued their southward trek until they rolled into Salt Lake City, headed over the I-15 overpass at 600 North, and then wound their way through the streets, getting closer and closer to their final destination. And finally, after 8 hours and 22 miles, the first of the group arrived at Temple Square. Slowly, the rest trickled in, sometimes using the last of their energy to finish in a flurry. Nursing sore feet and aching legs, they waited for the rest of the group to catch up. While walking, the group had stretched out over a mile. Now, finally, with cameras capturing the arrival at their destination, this group realized that sacrifices had to be made, but they too can do hard things.
The preparations for the temple walk actually began months earlier when the youth started researching an ancestor, reading gospel-centered books, and trying to get physically ready for the walk. In spite of the preparations, there were still plenty of blisters and stiff legs at church the next day. In September of 2008, ground was broken for the San Salvador, El Salvador Temple. 2 weeks ago, the temple was dedicated, making it the 4th temple in Central America and the 135th operating temple worldwide.
On August 21st, the church dedicated the San Salvador, El Salvador Temple. President Henry B. Eyring from the First Presidency dedicated the temple in 3 sessions. It was a great event. There were thousands of members who were able to participate. Historic day for El Salvador. A temple in El Salvador is very, very important for those Salvadoran saints for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it's a practical blessing. Whereas before they've had to travel sometimes at great expense and sacrifice to Guatemala City to be able to participate and visit a temple. Now they have one in their own country. The Salvadoran saints celebrated their new temple as you would expect Salvadorans to do, with music, with song, with celebration. There were 2,000–3,000 Salvadoran youths who participated in a big cultural event. It was a night of folk dancing and music, excitement, and it was also very, very special for those youth and their parents because they were able to perform for President Eyring and the other visiting general authorities. I see the growth of the church in Central America as really one of the miracles of the church. You can still speak to some of the older members in San Salvador, and they will recall a church in the capital city there where you could include the entire membership on the roll of one branch. And now there are over 100,000 members, I believe 15, 16 stakes, and the crowning symbol, a temple. So it really is a great success story for the church to be able to see how quickly the church has grown in El Salvador, and that's reflective of I think, all of Central America.
During the 2-week open house, more than 160,000 people from many different faiths were able to tour the beautiful new temple. Well, women worldwide will soon be receiving a gift from the church.
This book defines the message of who we are, who we stand for, what our responsibilities are.
The Relief Society gets a new resource manual. We'll have more on that coming up. Here are just a few of our pictures of missionaries serving around the world. And if you have a photo of the missionary you would like to share, please send it to us at mormontimes@ksl.com. Using gospel principles to teach your family about money can help set your children up for success. Parenting experts Linda and Richard Iyer are here to tell us about a plan that worked well in their home. Good morning.
Good morning.
So Linda, teaching our kids about money in a gospel-related sense doesn't seem to match, but you say it does.
It does, absolutely. I mean, we start telling our little children about tithing from the first little pennies that they earn. And kids need more training in order to be successful. I mean, money makes the world go round. And money makes the church go round.
They save money for their missions.
They,
I mean,
absolutely.
The more
yeah.
self-sufficient, when you think about it, the gospel is really a gospel of self-sufficiency. And we've been thinking a lot about the opposite. We've just been working on our new book, The Entitlement Trap. That's for you. And when you think about it, Kathy, entitlement goes way, way back. I think if you were try to think of a good name for the adversary's plan in the pre-life, I think it was entitlement. I'll guarantee everything. You won't have to work for anything.
You don't have to work for it, exactly.
Faith without works. I mean, it just the whole thing. We really are a church of self-sufficiency, and the best way to teach that is really through how to handle money, helping kids to be financially savvy.
Well, I want to know how you did this in your home, because we saw the pictures of the missionaries off the top. Did you have your missionaries earn part, all, none? How did that work?
We don't have a long time to tell you, but we had our kids buying their own clothes, all their own needs, wants. We did keep buying underwear, I have to mention that. But it really is amazing what happens when they earn it, when they own it. Then they can give it. Then they can, save it, whatever they want to do.
For their mission, for college, they paid part of the mission, part of the college. They don't have to pay it all, but if they pay some of it, then they feel ownership. Then they become better missionaries. They become better students. And we really think that allowances, especially the sort of handout allowances, they're like a welfare economy.
Right.
Instead, there ought to be some tasks that kids do. They ought to keep track of them themselves. You ought to have a family bank with money in it. And on Saturday, it ought to be payday instead of allowance day, and how much a kid gets ought to be directly proportionate to how much he does. Then he's learning how the real world works.
That's a perfect
example. And the real world works with work. Boy, that's a lot of W's. But,
and the missionaries find that out quickly,
don't know how to work.
The better.
In fact, I just heard a professor at BYU Idaho saying they're sending missionaries home for other reasons besides moral issues or health issues. If they don't know how to work.
They just don't know how to work. They've never really worked.
Model coddling our kids. It's just so amazing. And we all fall into that trap. I mean, we want to give them all that we can, but they need to earn it.
Right.
So how do we teach them then about agency and stewardship when it comes to finances?
I actually think you set up a family economy right in your home. Kids have certain jobs. They keep track of them on a computer program or with a pegboard.
You put on a poster or something so they can see it. Okay.
The better the props are, the better. We think a big pegboard where certain things they're supposed to do every day. Then they have to get you to initial a little slip saying how many they did each day. Then they drop it in the family bank. And then on Saturday, it's payday, and how much they get is according to how much they add up that they've actually done. And then the banker, namely the parent, you're very matter of fact. You're like, I mean, you don't say, why didn't you do better? You just say, I'm sorry, here's your little bit of money, here's your lot of money. And kids begin to learn that performance really matters in life.
Absolutely. Linda, you're finding that out, obviously, now that you have grandchildren.
No, absolutely. In fact, I do Grammy Camp every year, and one of the most important things is we work. We go out and pull weeds, and they get a penny for every weed, and then we go to the dollar store, and it's so exciting to see these kids excited about a pair of handcuffs or, you know, whatever it is that they buy.
And I'll tell you, Kathy, this business of entitlement, we've done a poll recently of 1,000 parents. Over half of them said entitlement attitudes were the biggest single problem they had, bigger than any other problem. So parents have to quit giving and start helping kids to earn and to save and to really understand how the world works.
Okay, Richard and Linda Eyre, thank you so much again. The book, The Entitlement Trap, so good. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Good to be here.
Well, you can find out more about this in Richard and Linda's new book, The Entitlement Trap, and it's on their website. That website is entitlementtrap.com. Speaking of books, Daughters in My Kingdom, The History and Work of Relief Society is a new book written especially for sisters.
We've had stories written for the historians. We've had stories written for the scholars. We've had stories written for the press, but we've never had the story written for the women themselves.
Until now, 6 million Latter-day Saint women around the world will be receiving a copy in the coming weeks. Brooke Walker tells why church leaders say we need this book now.
Since its start in 1842, the Relief Society has never had its own resource book. With the rapid growth of the church, General Relief Society President Julie Beck says the need for one has never been greater.
This book defines the message of who we are, who we stand for, what our responsibilities are.
Written with sisters from Africa to America in mind, each chapter includes stories of Latter-day Saint women from the past and present. And the book is organized by themes, such as family, sisterhood, and charity.
I found that I can open it to any page on any day in any moment if I'm discouraged or need an answer, and something that has life and meaning and virtue jumps out at me and helps me be a better person.
Sister Beck says Daughters in My Kingdom will provide perspective and strength for the 21st century woman. She also hopes it will clear up myths and misperceptions.
There is no second tier for the women of the church, that we are not an asterisk in this church or in our theology or in the world.
For Mormon Times, I'm Brooke Walker.
Unlike other manuals, Daughters in My Kingdom was written by one woman rather than a committee. Sister Beck and her counselors will talk more about the book during the upcoming General Relief Society meeting on September 24th. Thanks so much for joining us today on Mormon Times. We hope you have a great day.